Oh.
So we will wait for a minute or so and then start. Okay. So we now move on further with Erickson's stages of psychosocial development of a human being. We already saw in the previous stages where uh, we saw that in the very first stage, there is the challenge is to gain the trust with the mother, with the society, and with fundamental existence. Then, in the next stage, we saw that the challenge and the lesson that the soul had to learn was to gain control over oneself. And physically, this is seen as gaining control over one's sphincters, the anal sphincter, the bladder sphincter. And this involves, like I said last time, the development of the nervous system, the cortex, the frontal lobe, and the cerebral cortex, which get developed sufficiently to now gain control over the urge to pass stool and the urge to pass urine. That is fundamental. And then the next step is to gain control over one's skeletal muscles also. So that is what was the lesson to be learned in the second stage. And now we What the second stage, therefore, was called autonomy. Autonomy means self-control, self-independence versus shame. Shame was the cost that you paid if you failed to learn the lesson well and properly. Now that you have achieved self-control, the next step then is to master this skill. You are faltering initially, and you have now stopped faltering and you have achieved this skill well. In this stage that we will discuss today, the stage 3, what is formally called as the stage of initiation, taking initiative, versus the stage of guilt. In this stage, now the challenge is the lesson that needs to be learned is to gain mastery over your ability to hold and to let go. In the previous stage, we had learned the ability, gained the ability to hold and to let go. Now, which is the control of the muscles. Now, you know how to hold, you know how to let go. Now, the challenge is you should be able to discriminate when to hold and when to let go. This is little more advanced than what it was in the previous stage. So, in learning this lesson, one will need an environment which is going to be firm, encouraging, yet optimally restricting you from doing something that is inappropriate. So, this is the time where the clear sense of right and wrong is coming into play. From the outside world, that means from the caregivers, from the family members, from the parents, from the family, from society at large. This is from within. And interestingly, what is happening within the psyche is that the psyche now further splits and differentiates into the superego or the conscience. So, while you have reached this stage, you are bubbling with enthusiasm that now you have this newfound skill of wanting to hold at will and wanting to let go at will. So there is this energy, the newfound energy, to experiment with this wanting to hold and wanting to let go. But there are challenges involved. You cannot hold at your will, you cannot let go at your will. What you will now need, over which you have yet to gain mastery, is the discrimination. So it is like you have learned to start the car, you have learned how to move the steering wheel, the engine has started, so the energy is built up inside, but now you need to control this energy into the right direction. That is where the discrimination comes into picture. So you can imagine the amount of tension that is present within the system. The deep instinctual energy is as much on the rise because now the skeletal muscle control is achieved, control over your body is achieved. And with this newfound strength, there is all the chance of doing something that is not appropriate. So the outside control now becomes more tighter, more watchful at this stage. So why the word initiation or initiative versus guilt? So in this stage, there is an innate desire to manipulate the environment around. That means an initiation is taken, an intent is taken, the will comes in that now I want to manipulate the environment in my favor. But within the environment are also other people. So this discrimination comes into picture. So if you look at it, there are two ways to manipulate the environment. One is a male way, which is going outgoing, and the other is the female way, which is to bring it in, to bring towards you, to pull the environment in a feminine way. So same way, holding on and letting go, not any different. So at this stage, if the parents are very, very tight, there are too much observation of the self, then there is a possibility that you are too doubtful, too scared to make a mistake, and therefore you do not take an initiative. That is a problem. At the other end, if the parents are not sufficiently firm, then in that situation, you would end up hurting others, in turn hurting yourself, which is also not a good idea. So an optimal watchfulness of the outside of the parental forces is important at this stage. So the child is observed from outside in this stage, and also the child is a parent to himself. When I say a child is parent to himself, I am saying that he is also observing and judging his own actions. So constantly observing one's own self. So now if you take a situation where all this is ideal and optimally done, then you find a sense of confidence. When you learn this lesson well, then you have the confidence. It is like you have started driving the car, and then look, you made some small minor accidents and it is okay, and then the parents say it is okay, and you again restart the car and again start moving, manipulating and maneuvering the roads, and gradually the number of accidents start dropping, because now you know how to handle this car, you know how to handle this machine. But if the parents are going to be too tough with you and not allow you to do a single mistake, or reprimand you for very small mistakes, discourage you, criticize you for very small mistakes, then in that case, you become so fearful that you do not take the initiative at all. Because there is a huge sense of guilt that I made this mistake and I cannot make any more mistakes. This huge sense of guilt is like a brake on this car. So this stage is by far the most difficult stage to navigate through, because very few of us have this kind of optimal guilt. Either it is too much or it is too little. So therefore, our abilities are also in this state of doubt. Now, when we find that the outer environment is too harsh towards the mistakes that the child makes, this and not only a sense of guilt, but you will also find that the child therefore only toes the line of the parents. They will exactly follow the instructions by the book. They will not default. So they are the very obedient good boys and good girls. But there is a big cost that is paid for this, for being the good boy and good girl. Because what is happening within the outside frame, though the child is towing the lines of the rules and goes by the book, deep inside is this very powerful constricting force that doesn't allow the child to experiment and explore anything that is outside the set framework. And within the guilt, the shades of guilt can range from a sense of remorse, repentance, to a frank sense of anger towards one's own self, deep anger towards one's own self. When this becomes too constricting, there is always a danger of the child regressing back into the earlier stages. And deep within, it will carry the resentment towards one's own action. Then we will also find the beginning of very primitive form of sexuality in children at this time, which is again a play between the pleasure impulse and the need to control, need to restrain. So again, at this stage, either the pleasure impulse overrules or the constricting forces of the conscience will overrule, creating a big amount of imbalance. So either we will find that when this becomes a bit, when this lesson is not very optimal, then we will also find that there is a tremendous amount of aggression that is happening to manipulate the outer environment, and also possessiveness. How a woman will possess, how the girls will possess, is to becoming more attractive, and trying to draw people towards them. That's the way, the feminine way. And in the masculine way, they would become much more aggressive, competitive, resulting in upmanship and rage. That is a masculine way of manipulating the environment. So as you can see, this is the stage where the tension comes into picture. The tension of the id and then the superego now, which is developed, but yet it is rigid. It is still primitive, as much as the pleasure principle is primitive. So there is a tremendous amount of anxiety that comes up in this stage because of these two opposing forces. Now, in the previous stage, which is very similar to this stage, the previous stage was called autonomy versus shame. The idea of autonomy versus shame, the idea of shame is the idea of being exposed, idea of people judging you and putting you to shame. It is a societal phenomenon where you are exposed, your weakness is exposed, your or inability to control your sphincter or inability to control your lower instincts, and you are put to shame by society. As opposed to in this stage, the stage of guilt, it is less of the society, but it is more of you yourself saying that this is not okay. So the guilt is one step ahead of shame, while the two are really cousins, very, very closely knit. One gets absorbed into the other one. When this initiation comes, your ability to initiate an action and take an action, there is also this awareness and anticipation about how others are in terms of their ability to initiate. So it is capacity building and anticipating how well, how good you are. So the organs, physical organs involved in this stage are basically the genitals. And therefore, problems or fixations, what we call, when this lesson of this stage is not learned, there are problems at the sexual level, starting from premature ejaculation, masturbation, impotence or erectile dysfunctions. And at the mental level, we can find there is a split in the personality, the higher self and the lower self. There is jealousy with the peers. And like I told you, too much jealousy. An optimal amount is fine, but you are governed and driven by jealousy and rage. And you will, at two split ends, you will find extremely religious people towing the line of the religion by the book, exactly the obedient child, who is exactly towing the line of what the parents have instructed him or her to do. Here, the parent is the religion, and following the religious scriptures exactly as it is said. So it is said this is one of the most difficult stages for the humans to navigate through. This is where the clear split in the psyche appears. The split between the id, and within from the id itself, this superego arises, which is your conscience. And one has to actually grow to integrate both, and therefore to reach a balance. But that is not happening. And therefore, you see a large number of conflicts that are going on in the world are because a lot of population is stuck, fixated in this stage. So therefore, you will find either too much religiousness, extremely rigid, or there will be an antisocial behavior. So once again, the homeopathic implications of this is very important. In the history, two importance is when you're doing a history taking and when you're finding this conflict between the guilt, you're wanting to do something, but tremendous amount of guilt, too obedient, adults also, children also, then your history taking must go back to this level of childhood, where the initiation, the child is attempting to initiate something out of his own free will, but so you will need to explore the relationship between him and the parents. Very often you will find very strict parenting or very, very liberal, like in the last one. But here the consequences are much different. Then the split, delusion double, that's the split that we will find. And lack of confidence, there is a lot of guilt. And then the remedies can be classified accordingly. For example, Kalibromatum comes to my mind. Delusion, he is an object of God's vengeance. The God is the ultimate parent, and the God is very angry because you did not toe his line. This is the kind of rigid understanding. And you become an object of vengeance. So the amount of anger that is there in the bromides, it's basically the bromides, where there is tremendous amount of anger, which is deep, seething within, and huge amount of guilt. And very, very strict parenting. And we will also find many other remedies also, which have this split that we can always study from our repertoire. So this is so far as this stage 3 is concerned. Next Wednesday, we will go and do the stage 4 of Erickson's psychosocial development. So see you and a very happy Diwali to all of you and a very upcoming happy New Year. And we will meet on next Wednesday. Unfortunately, I have forgotten to record this video. So I don't know how I will be able to put this stage on the YouTube channel. But nevertheless, so see you all again next Wednesday. Bye-bye. Take care.